Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and this episode is part 2 of my chat with Siobhan, who was on this podcast a few weeks ago. And as a continuation of our chat together, Siobhan is going to tell us about 5 tools that she uses for self-care and especially in her recovery from sugar addiction. And these 5 tools may surprise you. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources about how to get rid of cravings, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. Come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. All right, so I'm back for part 2 with Siobhan. Lovely to see you again, Siobhan. And in part 2, because Siobhan already talked to us about her background story, and we wanted to come back and talk about what it's really like living day in, day out, long-term, sugar and flour free. And Siobhan, thank you for coming back to talk to us.
Thanks so much for having me back, Netta. And we were talking about before we started recording kind of how, I used to think, oh, if I could just get my sugar addiction under control, everything would be perfect. And I think that this is kind of the part 2 is really important because here I am now in January, it was 6 years. So it's been about 6.5 years since I've gone sugar and flour free.
Wow.
And there's still a lot of ups and downs that I'm dealing with. And I would love to say, and I lived happily ever after, but that's not life. There's always going to be curveballs thrown at us. And I've gone through some pretty big things. And I am so grateful for my recovery. So I want to talk a little bit more about that and kind of the tools that really help me, because I think that's important too. And I want to encourage everyone that you have to have your own toolkit. You got to tailor it to you. Yep. That's the only thing that's going to keep it sustainable. But I love hearing other people's what works for them, because sometimes I might be like, oh, I want to try that. And then also kind of lead into one of my tools is the emotion code, which we touched on briefly. So we'll talk more about that too. But I think we left off kind of once I got to that 1 year mark and was feeling really good and realizing I wasn't going back. This was my new way of living. And I'm happy to say that here I am still not eating sugar or flour intentionally. I do want to add that in there because I travel a lot for work. I eat in hotels, restaurants. So maybe I just do the best I can. So maybe sometimes I am getting something, but never intentionally, and nothing that has, triggered me to want something more.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's not always the eating of the thing, it's the being triggered by the thing. And sometimes it's not even food, it's situations or emotions that trigger us. And so when we say sugar and flour free, both of us, what we mean is we feel free. Doesn't mean we've never eaten one tiny, teeny bit of sugar or flour, as you say, unintentionally most of the time, but it means we feel like we are free from the hold that they had on us. Is that the case for
Yeah.
you?
100, that's a perfect way to put it, that grip it had on us, you know. But interestingly, so, you know, I would say those first few years, what worked for me really well. And then now I'm 44, and I remember turning 42, and it was like that first wave of perimenopause hit me. And I had kind of remember Bitten Johnson talking about, I think she put it like she was elbow deep in chocolate in her menopausal years, even after being in recovery for a long time.
And she's an
So
expert in sugar addiction, Bitten Johnson, right? Just for those who don't know the name.
yes, if people don't know her name, yeah, expert in sugar addiction. She's out of Sweden, someone that's probably been doing this one of the longest, most successful. She helps other people, coach other people. So yeah, I remember thinking, okay, if she struggled with it, this is, you know, serious. And at the same time, you know, I went through a divorce, lots of big life events going on, and I'm still very proud that I didn't fall off the wagon during the divorce. And that's thanks to those 5 tools that I'm going to reference soon of what I need to do on a daily basis, not like once in a while, but on a daily basis. And anytime I feel myself kind of slipping, and by slipping, I don't mean eating something I shouldn't, it's more having those thoughts around it or feeling like triggered, I immediately tell myself, okay, it's time to go back to the basics. And that's what works for me and kind of recenters me. But what about when your basics change? And that's what I kind of want to talk about today, is because I think perimenopause is something that so many women are unaware of how long it really lasts. You know, if menopause is 1 year without your period, perimenopause is that time beforehand, and that can start in your 30s and
Wow.
last your 50s. Yeah, it can start. There's some women that start experiencing it really early on. Most women, it's more common in their 40s, especially by mid 40s, where I am now, that they really start feeling, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, the hot flashes, you know, a lot of people gain weight, you become more insulin resistant, the sleeping issues, but there's so many other things, including like frozen shoulder. There's people get itchy skin, cognitive decline, where it's hard to recall things, string together sentences, or even what I was finding the past 6 months is I procrastinate more and have a harder time focusing. And that's something that normally is not a problem for me. When I learned this is all part, like estrogen is the thing that kind of keeps us going. And as estrogen declines, these things are really normal, more anxiety, more depression, less resilient to stress. Now, just listening to all of that, it's hard for any woman navigating it. But if you are a sugar addict and you're in recovery, even think of it like anxiety, depression, less stress resilient. These are all triggers, you know,
Yeah.
like those are things that are going to complicate being able to stay in recovery. I think such a big part of it is just stress management. I recently had my hormones tested, and my cortisol is like off the charts. You know,
Really?
that stress hormone, and it's not coming down the way it should be. And yes, I'm going through some really stressful times, but part of it is our hormones too.
Yeah. I know
So
when my cortisol level, sorry, I know when my cortisol levels are high. I haven't got them tested per se, but I can tell the correlation between my stress levels are high, therefore cortisol, and belly getting flabbier.
yes, and it is. It's exactly right. It goes right to that belly fat. And again, so many women, whether you're a sugar addict or not, whether you've ever struggled with your weight or you haven't, most women, not everyone, but most women do experience weight gain of some kind. And that is what's happening to me right now. So age 42, it kind of hit me a little bit. I made some adjustments. And one thing for me that worked really well at that point was some intermittent fasting, and kind of following Dr. Mindy Pell's Fast Like a Girl protocol, where I was eating more of nature carbs during certain times of my cycle, but being a little more keto biotic is what she calls it during other parts of my cycle. And that worked really well. My body adjusted quickly. But now here, and I wouldn't have been able to do that intermittent fasting. I do want to say by that point, I was like 4 years into this, I wouldn't have been able to do it earlier than that. So that's not something I recommend right off the bat for people, but it was a good tool for me during this stage of things. Now here I am at 44, and I've noticed for the last almost year, I would say, I turned 44 in July, so I'll be 45 soon. That slowly, like my body, it's not necessarily, it is a little flabbier in my stomach, but it's more my body composition has changed. I have a friend that says it's like my body rearranged itself without my permission. And I'm like, that's exactly how I feel. Like
Yeah.
I'm bigger, like, and I don't weigh myself. I don't believe in weighing myself, but I can tell by the way my clothes feel. And for the first time in 6 years, I just had to buy a bigger size of pants. And that was I just want to be really honest, that caused a lot of emotions to come up for me, a lot of triggering things and it made me even more grateful for my recovery and the freedom I have felt, because now I am having these thoughts of like, oh no, what's gonna fit? What am I gonna wear in the morning? What should I be eating differently? It's so interesting how some of those thoughts that have been gone for a long time are kind of like sneaking their way, back in. So what I'm doing about it was I did want to just get a baseline and get my levels tested. I'm listening and reading a lot about perimenopause because I like to understand what's going on. And that's making me feel a lot better. I will just share one of the things that I learned is as you're losing estrogen, your belly fat is one of the areas that produces more estrogen. So your body is so smart that it's like, whoa, we're losing estrogen. Let's make some more like belly fat so that we can raise and produce more estrogen. So our bodies are like incredible. So I'm trying to, instead of like fighting against it, kind of surrendering to it, but I'm continuing the things that I've always done, and I think I sometimes I have a pity party for myself, like, but I already eat so well and I'm doing all the things and I meditate. Like when I did go to my naturopath and we're kind of going through, yes, I eat a whole foods diet. Yes, I exercise every day. Yes, I strength train. I do a lot of the things. Sometimes it's frustrating to me. Well, what else can I do here? But I am so grateful because if I weren't doing all those things, I would really be struggling, even more. So I am grateful, but it just goes to show, even if you find that thing that works for you, it's not going to work forever. We have to constantly kind of evolve and reevaluate.
Yeah, because life is dynamic, your body is dynamic, and how it uses the nutrients and how it copes with, real life is also dynamic. It changes all the time, right?
And your needs are going to change. Like what you need in your 30s is going to look different than your 40s, your 50s, etc. And for me in the 40s, it seems even year by year, it's changing. Yeah. So really paying attention to that and being open to it. So my 5 tools that I say that really, really have kept me on track, these 6.5 years, even during major life changes like a divorce, and now all this perimenopause stuff. So I always say I have like five things. The first one is establishing a morning routine of some kind. So for me, that like I don't even get out of bed until I've done like 2 or 3 meditations and usually some kind of affirmation thing too. So I love Calm, the app, and I also like Insight Timer. I use both of those for meditation, breathing exercises, affirmations, so much on YouTube too. That's for free, so there's so many free resources out there too. I do pay for Calm, the app, but I use it every single day. So it's worth it for me. And that's very important to me is how I start my day. Most of the time I'm getting up without an alarm. I have it set, but I typically wake up a few minutes before it. I'm not looking at my phone and my text messages and my emails. And trust me, that's blown up overnight. I open the Calm app and I do all of my meditations first. And then I get in the shower. I do some dry brushing. Shower is just how I wake up because I just don't like coffee. I don't drink coffee. And then the mornings that I can, and I try to, I would say 5 out of 7 days, I have a red light that I sit in front of when I get out of the shower, buck naked, sit in front of the red light. And then I'm finishing doing either some breathing exercises, some other kind of meditation or affirmation. And I'll sit in there for 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes, depending what time I have. And it just starts the day on such a positive note. And then I'm not like, but there's of course the times that I like oversleep and then I'm scrambling out of bed and the whole day feels so much different than when I've taken the time to kind of wake up and start with more intention. I have candles that I sometimes light. I just try to make some kind of like morning ritual that feels really calming, grounding, and then I feel good to start the day. And then the second tool then is the opposite of that, is my evening ritual, which I also think is really important. Not just how you start your day with intention, but how are you going to end your day? And we know sleep is so important for everyone. So many women during perimenopause, menopause, experience sleep disturbances. And I think even as just in my recovery, I realize how critical a good night's sleep is to help you eat better, make better choices, right? Like once I think most people reach for a sugar or some kind of snack when they're looking for that quick energy burst. And a lot of times that comes from feeling sleep deprived. I know another perimenopause symptom that I want to mention here too is less impulse control. So again, when you think about having cravings, like I've heard a lot of my friends who aren't sugar addicts say, man, like I just keep eating blank, whether it be the brownies, whatever. And they're like, that's really unlike me. It's like I'm like, well, now you know how it feels to be a sugar addict. Like you feel almost like compulsion to eat this thing. And so a lot of women kind of experience that. And I think if you aren't getting a good night's sleep, that impulse control is even worse, right? Like where you really aren't able to. Yeah, Netta's like, yes, me.
Yeah, totally me. And it's like we think that not getting good sleep makes you tired the next day, and I'm not denying that's true, but we underestimate, at least I do, all the ripple effects of not getting good quality sleep. And it feels a bit like a vicious cycle because it's like this pressure. You got to get good sleep. And I'm like, I'm not getting freaking good sleep. And it's making me stressed. And then I'm too stressed to get good sleep and so on and so forth. And then all the other things, your cravings are stronger. The impulsivity is stronger. You have this compulsion. And then you're looking for some kind of energy boost. Most people, sugar. And so it's like this whole vicious cycle that feels even more difficult to step out of.
I agree. So I think, just like my kids are 10 and 8 now, but I know people with little kids this will resonate with them of how important like a sleep routine is. Every night for kids, we put them on like this sleep schedule. And I'm like, why aren't we doing that as adults? I know. And I think we all have like kind of a sleep window that works for us. For me, I need to be in bed asleep by 10 o'clock. And then I wake up at about 6 o'clock. Like that to me is my 8-hour window that feels really, really good. If I stay up too much later than that, I don't sleep as well. And if I sleep in too late, I don't feel as energized. So I make sure that I have this nightly routine just to set myself up for sleep success. For kids, sometimes it's like you read 2 books, you do a bath, you sing 3 songs, whatever. What is it for you? Like for me, I need to be off all of electronics by 9 o'clock at night. So if I am going to watch like a TV show or do some work on the computer, again, this is like most of the time. Of course, it's never going to be perfect, but most of the time I'm trying not to be on any kind of device after 9 o'clock. And I also really like to take baths. So a lot of the nights I'm taking like an Epsom salt bath, putting some essential oils in, reading my book in the bathtub, which just feels like so luxurious.
Yeah.
There's some nights that I write in my journal. Again, I'll light candles in my room. It's just kind of some quiet downtime to the evening that just starts telling my brain, hey, it's time to go to bed.
Yeah.
Even like I have a skincare routine that I like to do at night, just washing my face, but I take some time to do that and brush my teeth and floss. Like that's all part of this kind of winding down, so that like I try to be in bed and read, and by 10 o'clock the lights are off, and I will say most of the time then I can go right to sleep. Of course, not all the time, but when I kind of stick to those things, or if I have a lot on my mind that night, which I do, like I got to do this, I got to do this, I'll write it down, or I'll do a meditation to fall asleep, just to kind of, because there are some nights my brain is just still wired, just kind of revved up. So anything that I can do to kind of, start bringing that down. So I do think establishing the morning routine of how you want to start your day is important. And then an evening routine to start winding you down is also really important. And then my third thing is, for me, is daily exercise. And preferably that means like a walk outside. And I had started doing a lot more strength training earlier this year. So I was missing my walk. It was hard to get them both in a day. And now I've scaled back where I'm making sure I'm still doing strength training, maybe 2 days a week, but making sure I'm walking most days. Because for me, and living in Portland, Oregon, where we get a lot of rainy, dreary days, being outside, regardless, even if I'm walking with an umbrella, just makes me feel so good. Breathing in that fresh air, connecting with nature. A lot of times I'll listen to a podcast. I might call a friend. So sometimes I'm like multitasking on these walks, but more and more often I'm trying not to do anything, but just be present in the walk and see what's coming up. See what emotions are coming up, what I'm thinking about, and just kind of like paying attention. It's just some time to be with myself, basically. Again, 2 kids, lots going on all the time, work, kids. I don't have a lot of time for myself. So these are the areas that I kind of have to carve out that kind of downtime. So walking is really, really important to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have something like that,
Well,
Netta,
I was
too?
just going to say, we moms, we let ourselves, I think, slide down to the bottom of the list, of the to-do list, or the, list of priorities. And it's a challenge. It feels like a real challenge to, climb all the way back up towards the top of that thing, that list of things that we do to take. We're so used to taking care of others. We are so bad at taking care of ourselves. So it's inspiring to hear you say, what you do.
Well, and that clicked early on for me with recovery. It's like I realized that has to absolutely come first. And it still does, my recovery before anything else, even my own kids. Because otherwise, I am no use to anyone. I've got to put that first. And then I am a much better mom, friend, coworker, whatever.
I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast, and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it, so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar.
That really starts to slide the days that I'm not as good at doing these things. it really is evident in, even my parenting. I'm a lot less patient. I'm not showing up in any situation as the person I want to be. So I think that's really important. And then like kind of number 4 for me is to continue eating no sugar, no flour. That's all that I do. Like, I am not worried about, because sometimes I'm like, ooh, I should also be counting macros. And ooh, that person also cuts this out. And once I start trying to do too much of that, that's triggering for me too. Or if I start thinking, oh, well, that person, she's doing this, I should try that. It's like immediately I start having all of these triggers, or if I try to be too restrictive. So I just kind of go back to basics of, no sugar, no flour, and then kind of experiment for me, like with the intermittent fasting. But again, keeping open on that I don't have to do it perfectly, and I can kind of make it work for me. Because again, that's what I think is going to be sustainable. So that I really do make sure that I'm getting the nutrients that I need every day, and part of that is meal prepping.
Yeah.
And planning. And I hate cooking right now. I hate to say that out loud too. I just loathe cooking right now. I'm going through this burnout phase of cooking. And so I'm trying to find other healthy ways that I can eat. Or when I do cook in one big batch. So, and that takes some prep and planning, and that's helping me a lot. But I just don't want to cook every single meal, every single night, all the time. So I will say really important to prep and plan.
Yeah, totally hear you. And yesterday, you see, I put a chicken in the Instant Pot, right? Like the pressure cooker, and finished it off in the oven, and just like tore up some lettuce and, with balsamic vinegar and olive oil. And I was like, I don't know if I could call this cooking. I'm just like putting a chicken into something and turning it on, I felt a bit like a fraud, telling people, oh yeah, I cook every night. No, you don't. You just like press a button.
That is me though. I have always said I'm not a big cook. I don't enjoy cooking. It's not like some people, like my brother loves it. It's his way to wind down. No, me, it's just another thing on my to-do list. But I have tried to change my mindset, and instead of I don't like cooking or I hate cooking, I love cooking healthy meals for me and my family. So I do try to change the mindset on it, but why not hack as much as you can, like you're saying? That is me. Crock pot, Instapot, anything quick and easy. It can still be healthy and delicious. It doesn't have to be these like really complicated recipes. So I think you are like cooking,
Yeah,
But then my last thing, like step 5, I think is really important in that it's addressing any kind of like emotional stuff that's coming up, because again, a lot of us are eating to numb, or even eating to celebrate, eating for all these different reasons. So when you're not doing that anymore, or you're really being conscious of not doing that, it's like asking yourself, oh, I'm having the urge to eat something. I know I'm not hungry. So what do I need? And sometimes just like checking in, or what am I feeling? And learning to sit with those uncomfortable feelings. Like getting comfortable being uncomfortable is still a challenge for me, and just sitting in it and just kind of being like, ugh. But then it does pass. What they say is if you really just kind of lean into it instead of resisting it. I think there's that saying, what you resist persists. I think that's true. And I feel like this really a lot with my divorce and a lot of the feelings, I just felt them all. I cried a lot. I was angry, sad, all the emotions, and just felt them all. And I knew I needed it even more when I was like wanting something to take the edge off, whether that was like, for instance, I still eat tortilla chips sometimes. So technically I could eat that, but I was like, I'm eating it though, because I don't want to feel something, it's different than just, eating it because I'm hungry. It was like, I'm trying to avoid a feeling. So I really, really have gotten more comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's where the emotion code, body code, belief code come in. This is a tool that was introduced to me about a year into being sugar and flour free by a very good friend of mine. And she was telling me about how it's just a way to release trapped emotions in the body. So kind of clearing up our emotional baggage. And I was like, yes, please. I have a
Yeah,
lot of that because I
we
was.
could all do with that.
Yeah, I was having all this stuff coming up that for years I'd been shoving down with food or whatever because I didn't want to feel these feelings. And so it is a really great tool. It was created by Dr. Brad Nelson, who's a chiropractor. And he realized that a lot of his patients were getting well with his normal chiropractic, care, but there'd be like 15% that just weren't getting better, even though he was doing the same things. It might be the exact same issue, but it wasn't getting better with one person. And he thought, what's going on? So he really started researching just the emotional component and energy work in general and how that, and I do agree with like most, I think, physical ailments, whether it be disease, chronic pain, cancer, whatever it might be, there's some kind of emotional component underneath of it. And our bodies are basically telling us like we're out of balance. Like it's kind of drawing attention to we need some help and attention. So the emotion code chart is like 60 emotions that he found to be most commonly trapped in the body. So I
60,
use some
60?
60. Yeah, I'm kind of
Wow.
showing that here. I have a
I
little, and
didn't
you can even
I didn't even know
Google.
I had 60 emotions.
Oh, and that's the whole other thing. Think about that. How many emotions could you really write out if I said list emotions? Most of us would be like happy, sad,
Yeah,
mad.
yeah, totally. Half a
And this
dozen.
is, oh yeah, and it's great for kids too, because most of us aren't given any kind of emotional vocabulary. So I talk to my kids, we do emotion code. And for instance, it might be like, what came up the other day, a resentment. And my son's like, well, what's resentment? So I
Mm.
gave him an example of what you might feel resentful when, and he's like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I felt that at school the other day. And then he gave me an example. So it's just a great way to even have that conversation, but
Mm.
also even as an adult to be able to identify, well, it's not just anger. There's actually bitterness there too, or resentment or other things. And it's something about identifying it and naming it that then can help it release. So we do something called muscle testing, and you can look this all up. Ned, I'll give you Dr. Bradley Nelson's website. It's just discoverhealing.com. Maybe you can link it
Sure.
along with my website, which I have information on all of this of how it works, but I can't really go into too much just because of time. But it basically, you use muscle testing to identify as a way to communicate with your subconscious of what's trapped and needs release. And then we release it. So that's the emotion code. He built on that though with something called the body code. And this is really cool because it gets into the imbalances in the body itself. So it could be your thyroid gland is out of balance. It could be that you have a disc in your back out of balance. It could be a pathogen. It could be a toxin. What I love is that sugar comes up a lot as a toxin for people.
Yeah.
Uh, it could be, that you have a viral pathogen in the body. It could be a chakra or a meridian that's out of balance. So it's all these different systems in the body. It could be something going on in your digestive system, your microbiome. So again, it's the same thing, kind of muscle testing to identify the imbalance, releasing any associated imbalances around it. A lot of times there might be some trapped emotions in the colon, for instance. Then you release those, and then we can reset the colon and you can feel a lot better. This works really great for physical pain. I'll have people that I work with on a session that might be having neck pain, say, and they're at an 8 pain level out of 10. And by the end of the session, we've gotten that down to like a 4 or a 3. So it's really cool. And sometimes it's just releasing emotions. That's it. That's making the neck pain go away. Because again, I think most pain and stuff, there are some trapped emotions there. And then most recently, which he just came out with in October. So I was one of the first AD practitioners certified in what's called the belief code. And this is incredible to me. It's way of kind of uprooting any negative belief systems that get stuck in the body. And it's all kinds of like limiting beliefs. For example, I'm not enough. I'm not lovable. Nothing works out for me. Any kind of like negative thought that gets trapped, and it can make, he calls it like a tree in our subconscious. So it's like this belief system tree that grows. And we start at the top of the tree and chop it down to its root. And then we pull it out by the root, because what happens if you don't, it's just going to grow back. So it's a way of actually completely uprooting these negative belief systems out of the subconscious mind. And that has been incredible.
Incredible. That's a very powerful image. It was that what you wanted to practice on me?
Yes. So I know we've got a little bit of time left. So we thought we could, again, it's hard, I think, to listening to this, like how it all works. So Netta has volunteered. We'll just do like a quick little session. And most likely when people book sessions with me, we do a mix of anything that comes up. But for something like this, I would say most of the times the emotions are going to come up first. You know, if you think of healing like an onion, it's layer by layer. So we kind of want to see what's going on first. So Netta, if there is something kind of going on today for you that you're willing to share, that maybe we could just check in and see if there's anything we could release for you.
Yeah. So what, you want me to tell you like a situation that's like stressing me out or something?
Yeah. Or even just saying, I'm just stressed. You know, is there anything you can do to help with stress?
Yeah, I am. I'm stressed today.
Okay, so let's just focus on that. You can share more than that, but you don't have to. That's what clients love about it. So let's just see. So normally I would just, kind of check in and just do a little intention and just say, please help us find and clear for Netta today anything that's creating stress for her, anything that's going to kind of help her today, taking our egos out of it. And then I always just check, are we divinely guided, shielded, protected? Yes. And then always kind of offer up a little prayer with love and gratitude. So I'm doing some muscle testing, and I'm just going to ask yes or no questions. Is there an emotion that we can release for Netta today around stress? And I'm getting a yes. So I have my chart in front of me. And the very first emotion coming up is grief. So that's yours. And that does feel current, meaning it was trapped within the last year. So I have a magnet that I swipe down the back of my head 3 times. This is how we're going to clear this trapped emotion. So we're just going to release that grief out of Netta's body and out of her subconscious completely and entirely. Just take a nice deep breath in and out. And then I always check, did that release? And I'm getting a yes. Is there another trapped emotion here that we can release for you? And it is, there's hatred coming up. So this is a strong one. I always ask, is it yours or is it absorbed? This one is yours. It's something going on currently. It's not towards yourself or towards someone else, but it feels like towards a situation. So again, we're just going to release that hatred, releasing that out of your body and out of your energy field completely and entirely. Deep breath in and out. Good. Another one coming up is self-abuse. So that's that negative self-talk, beating yourself up. That's yours and current too. So let's just release that self-abuse, releasing that completely and entirely as pure energy back to the earth. Deep breath in and out. And we're just going to do one more, because I'm sure there's a lot more here, but just for time's sake, let's see what the next one is coming up. And it's feeling unsupported, just feeling unsupported. So that's yours and it is current. So we'll just release this trapped emotion of unsupported, releasing that out of your body and out of your energy field completely and entirely. Deep breath in and out. Okay,
Wow.
good. We would do a session where we would just continue going. Your subconscious will let me know when it's cleared everything it wants to clear. It's never going to be too much for you to process. But that was just kind of a little mini session. So how do you kind of feel now? What did that feel like?
That feels freeing, right? And it's like, what are you doing inside of my head across the computer screen, right? How do you, are you just like picking emotions out of nowhere, or where are you getting these things from that are causing the stress?
Yeah, so it's the emotion code chart that I'm using and using the muscle testing. But also, I can find like if it wasn't something current, this was all stuff going on for you now. A lot of times it's from other ages, and I can actually muscle test and say, oh, that sadness, that's from age 23. And it's just incredible. You know, people will say that same thing to me, like, how could you possibly know that? Well, I don't know it. Your body knows it, your subconscious knows it, and that's what's storing it and wants to release it. So again, I really encourage people to go to the discoverhealing.com website, because Dr. Brad has some amazing videos on how it actually all works if you're really interested in learning about even the science behind it, because it's all like quantum physics stuff. For me, I just know how it makes me feel, but I know a lot of people want to understand how it works too. So, and the same thing would go with the body code, belief code, very similar kind of thing that I would be just asking kind of these yes and no questions.
Yeah, and it's on the receiving end for myself, it's easy. It's all we can handle, saying yes or no. In fact, I didn't even have to say yes or no. You said it for me.
No, that's just your subconscious that I'm asking. Yeah, so you don't have to do anything. A lot of people will write down notes, but I have other people that just lay down and they say it's like more relaxing than a massage. You
Mm,
know, a lot of people will say afterwards they just feel lighter.
yeah.
Um, and then it's always interesting to see in the next few weeks how things kind of continue to shift and clear. So, especially when you uproot a belief system, that
Yeah.
like take a few months, and it really is amazing to see what changes happen in your life.
Because it's a huge deal. All those things that are keeping us stuck, and that we use sugar and flour to numb, right? Or to cope with, even though we're not actually coping with them, we're just like pushing them down. And this is what I always say, you know, real life happens whether or not you eat sugar, but not
Mhm.
eating sugar, and I include flour, is an opportunity for you to actually cope with all these difficult emotions. And it can feel scary because then they're in your face, right? But otherwise, what are you doing? You're just pushing them down and pushing back the time when sooner or later these things are going to come back and really slap you in the face.
Agreed. And it could turn into things like dizzy, you know, if you are not checking in and clearing things out or processing them. And most of us aren't taught how to process, you know,
Exactly.
emotion. So this is a way I found that it was just kind of like a guideline for me, but I still get things trapped. I continue to like work on myself. It's just such a great tool to be able to use for me in my daily life, and such a great tool with the kids to give that emotional vocabulary. And the
Fantastic.
most exciting thing for me about the belief code was, of course, right away, I was like, do I have a belief system around my sugar addiction? Of course I did. And it was called a parallel belief system. And instead of one tree that we talked about, that's three trees. One of them was mine, one was inherited from my dad, one was inherited from my mom. And that made total sense to me, because addiction a lot of times had some inherited genetic things going on too. So it was just fascinating to be able to kind of see that and release that. So yeah, that was one thing I was really looking forward to working on myself.
Oh, wow. Those are amazing tools. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and for using
Yes.
me as a guinea pig. I'm happy to do that.
Yes. Thank you for
And
volunteering.
yeah, no, you're more than welcome. And I'm going to put those links in with the show notes together with with this episode. And Siobhan, thank you. You're so inspiring because you're actually living sugar-free and flour-free, not just short term, but long term, right?
yeah, really committed to it, even with the ups and downs and the challenges. Like,
Yeah.
I still know 100% having sugar and flour is not going to help me, you know? So, yes, I know it's still, life is still challenging, but I'm still so much happier, so much more resilient without having that in my life. So, thank you so much for letting me come back and share part 2 of the story.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you. I really hope that you found this conversation with Siobhan as inspiring as I did, and that her practical tools can help you in your everyday life to not just believe that it's possible to lead a happy life without sugar and flour, but also to see how you can apply her 5 tools in your everyday life. And if you need some support and encouragement and guidance to get to real freedom from cravings, then my 90-day program, Freedom from Cravings Formula, may be just the thing for you. It's a program that's specifically designed for women over 50 who want to get rid of cravings and feel more in control around food, especially sugar and comfort foods. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of a restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life where you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can hop on a free clarity call with me at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on the big green button, Schedule a Clarity Call. We'll have a quick 30-minute one-on-one chat to see if the Freedom from Cravings Formula 90-day program is a good fit for you. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.